Welcome to level 14 out of 31 levels of the 613 degrees or rungs on Jacob's ladder. It is good practice to not bow down and serve idols. To bow down is to submit and give into idolatry and worshiping money, sex, power, and the many other idols that exist. It is also important to not serve idols. Serving idols is trying to make one happy from chasing idols such as money, sex, and power that results in an insatiable appetite and ongoing cycle of envy and greed. It is important to keep God in mind and focus on his two qualities. It is important to not sacrifice altruistic desires and selfless desires. Once one plants seeds or desires of altruism and selflessness, it is important to not remove the seeds from the ground and think about turning back to egoism and selfishness. If one does remove the seeds, it is important to catch the action and to not go further away by turning to negative thoughts, emotions, or feelings, actions, and restraints. To turn is to begin to move in a particular direction. This is the first step of reverting to idolatry. It is important not to turn to what's called Satan or Satan or enemy or opponent, also known as the ego. Satan or the ego will present temptation, which we will later speak about. It is also important to not act as a pillar for idolatry and support negativity. Acting as a pillar of idolatry is to promote negativity and move towards the next step of accepting idolatry, which is to place a figured stone in our lives. To place a figured stone in our land or lives is to enter a stationary state of fixity and to worship idols in a fixed state, unable to change or unwilling to change. To avoid this, it is best to not utter, mention, or speak of idols. Uttering, mentioning, and speaking of idols is to create the idea or plant the seed that idolatry is worthwhile when it is actually empty in the long run and full of fleeting and transient pleasures. It is also important not to love idols, not to cleave to idols, and not to walk in the ways of idolatry and other false gods. To love is to pull idols close to us. To cleave to idols is to hold on to and maintain a connection with idols, and to walk in the ways of idolatry is to emulate an idolater and completely worship idols over God. So there is an opponent in life called Satan or Satan, which opposes us achieving fulfillment and happiness. Satan is another name for ego. Satan possesses two qualities of egoism and selfishness. Satan tries to win the game by giving us something called temptation. Satan uses temptation to coax and persuade us to do wrongful acts. It is important to not give in to the enticer or temptation, not to hearken or listen to the enticer, not to pity or sympathize with the enticer, not to spare or allow the enticer to exist, and not to conceal or hide the enticer. Life is going to be a challenge, but by increasing our awareness of Satan, the opponent, and the ego's tricks and traps, we can avoid falling into the pit of idolatry and prevent Satan or the ego from having a hold on us. The enticer is the impulsive voice found within us that says, "Who cares?" or "It doesn't matter," and tricks us by enticing us with a reward at the end of the act. Little do we know that the reward is a fleeting and transitory pleasure that, if continually received, can lead to addiction, irritability, and unhappiness. By choosing God or the soul over Satan or the ego, one can receive longer-lasting enjoyment called joy. This is the game of life, and by knowing how to fight against our opponent and being prepared, we can win the game of life and cause fulfillment in our life and the lives of others.